Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Leslie Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Leslie as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions. Welcome to Women We Should Know. Welcome back to Women We Should Know on what for you is post-election, but for my guest and I is the day before election. So we're sitting on a few pins, sitting on a few needles, and have a lot of concerns and a lot to talk about, regardless of what comes of the election. So let me tell you about our guest. This is someone that we have had the privilege to have on before. Karen Hinton is a Mississippi native. She is a nationally recognized media professional in Washington, D.C. and New York. She is best known for her role as press secretary to both former Housing Secretary Andrew Cuomo and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Hinton played what Politico dubbed the Helen of Troy role in the clash between Cuomo and now the former governor of New York and Mayor de Blasio. The New York Times called the clash one of America's ugliest political feuds. Hinton cut her teeth as press secretary for the first Black congressman from Mississippi since Reconstruction in 1986. The Democratic National Committee hired her in 1989, serving a similar role for Ron Brown, who was the first Black chairman of the DNC and a key political strategist to elect Bill Clinton as president. In 1995, Hinton joined the Clinton administration as press secretary for Cuomo at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. During that time, President Clinton began to face charges of womanizing and worse. We all remember that. Hinton later relocated to New York and became Mayor de Blasio's press secretary. She found herself at the center of the crossfire between longtime frenemies, love that term, Cuomo and de Blasio, often becoming the subject of news coverage herself. Known for never ducking from a fight, Hinton was at the peak of her career when a catastrophic brain injury from a freak accident confronted her with the battle of her life. But she recovered and went on to write the powerful book, Penis Politics, which if you haven't checked it out, run, don't walk. Hi, Karen. It's so nice to have you back with us.
Well, it's great to be back. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Well, where do we start? Let's start with Roe versus Wade, because that is a major player in our cultural conversation right now. It's a major player in the election that we are sitting on the threshold of, and it's going to be a major player going forward after this election, regardless of who comes out on top.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. And by the time this show airs, we will know how the pro-choice movement impacted the vote. Mm-hmm. Right now, it feels like pro-choice has lost some of its electoral momentum among suburban white women. Mm-hmm. Because some Republican candidates, oddly enough, but mostly men, they've backed away from the anti-abortion, given that many Republican women expressed outrage immediately after the Supreme Court ruling. Mm-hmm. So this led to some Republican candidates saying, okay, we need to back off this some so we don't scare them away. And I think that has worked in some of the elections. Also, we just had a recent poll come out that found that the majority of Latinos support pro-choice, even though that's more than we thought, because there's been some talk about Latinos leaning toward voting Republican. Mm-hmm. So at this point, we don't really know what the results will be. Is it
Right.
pro-choice elect more candidates, or did it not really help the candidates that we're looking to elect, which would be those who would want to bring back Roe v. Wade and
Yes.
how Roe v. Wade mattered to so many women. And I think it's important to remember, and I hope the candidates are out there talking about this right now as we speak, that almost 43% of abortions are early medical abortions.
Yes, that's right.
So, and the vast majority of them are performed at home with the abortion pills,
Yes.
which have been approved by FDA, and they're considered, the abortion pills, even safer than Tylenol
Yes.
and other kind of medicines that we buy right off the counter and take. So this is really important to remember, that women who are pro-choice are not looking to say, okay, all you women out there who get pregnant, go get an abortion. Nobody's demanding anybody get an abortion, but have a choice, have a choice in the matter. And also an important fact to remember is that almost 93% of abortions are performed at less than 13 weeks.
Yes.
And so I think women are really doing everything they can to minimize abortions. And that's a very important point to make, so that candidates can get out there and say, that's why we need pro-choice. So I'm hoping and praying that's what's happening right now as we sit here.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the terms pro-choice and pro-life, because pro-life is an incorrect term from its inception. And I believe if more women understood and paid attention and tracked the numbers, they would realize that pro-choice is not pro-abortion. It is pro-choice, and pro-life is absolutely not pro-life. We have 700,000 kids in foster care right now. If it was pro-life, we'd be dumping money into the foster care system. If it were pro-life, no woman would have to pay for, I don't even know what they're called. I never had kids, pregnancy vitamins. Let me call them that. But they would not have to pay for all of this. They would be able to have great care, because if it is pro-life, taking care of the mother is taking care of this life that you are advocating for.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. And then I take a completely different stance on this whole, you cannot have an abortion if you were raped, of these young girls. They say it, of course, there's a lot of it's God's will and what have you. I believe it's anti-life, because by not letting these young women have, and not even young women, 10 years old, you can't qualify that as a young woman. That's just a baby girl. Yes. By not letting them have an abortion, not only are you taking away their life in terms of potentially dying from having a pregnancy that their body is not yet matured enough to support, but the rest of their life is going to be haunted by this rape to a greater degree than someone who was actually able to have proper medical and psychological aftercare.
Right. No, exactly. And there are single mothers with children who get little to nothing support to help them with their children. So if you're pro-life, let's get serious about helping those women and those children they brought into the world. In Mississippi, now you have to remember, Mississippi is the state where the case was litigated to end abortions in the Dobbs case that the Supreme Court ruled on. So here's Mississippi advocating for anti-abortion laws and rulings by the court, And at the same time, there is a huge controversy right now in the state about how the two governors and have worked with a nationally known football player, Brent Favre, on literally stealing money from the welfare programs that they have in place in Mississippi, which go directly to single women.
Yes.
With children. And they use that money to build a volleyball stadium at the University of Southern Mississippi. $5 million just flushed down the toilet for single women with children. Now, help me understand that. I can't.
No.
I mean, they're basically, I think Republicans in general are lying to the American people about their commitment to helping single mothers with children, or any woman with children,
Yes.
when they don't choose abortion.
Absolutely.
They're not doing it. They're lying to us about it. It's not happening.
Yes.
And Mississippi
Yes.
is a great example.
Alabama is another great example. Let's bear in mind that the majority of the red states are in the South. Just mathematics. Can't change it.
That's right.
And Alabama, I used to think that Alabama had the highest infant mortality and mother mortality in the country until I read a recent international health report. They actually have the highest figures of any country, of any industrialized country on the planet. Now, here we are with this state going to not be able to have abortion. They already have more mothers dying during childbirth and more children dying during childbirth than any place else in the industrialized world. I cannot comprehend how that represents life. I just cannot comprehend how that represents life. And unfortunately, what we have combined with that, I'm going to pick on Alabama just because it's there.
Well, it's Alabama facts.
It's Alabama numbers. It's not.
No, it's not. You're not making them up.
I'm not making them up. They have the highest percentage of high school dropouts and the lowest percentage of college entrants, kids entering college, and only 23% of those complete college. So what we're talking about is convincing a very uneducated populace of a media spin so that the politicians can gain their stance and be able to collect their funds from all the people who are in support of this pro-birth.
Yes. I'll tell you a quick story, personal story.
Sure.
That really gets us to the issue of choice. What does choice mean? My mother told me one time that abortions were wrong, but when a close relative of our family got a girl pregnant in high school, Mama paid for it. My cousin and this young girl, 16-year-olds in a Mississippi high school. Of course, they were too young. They had no money. My mother said this to me a decade later. She said it was a hard decision, but it was the right one. And the couple eventually married other people in their 20s, and they had children later. And those children are very happy and healthy. They're now grown adults. I never told my mother about my own abortion when I was a sophomore at Ole Miss in 1978. I didn't want to confide in her. And I think that's true for most 20-year-old women. They want to just go and do it on their own or have a good friend that they go with to help them through it. Because it is a difficult decision, but it's a choice. And you need to have the choices. Is a choice to tell my mother about it or not? Do I decide on keeping my child or not? Do I decide on having the child adopted or not? Or do I decide to have an abortion? And we're fortunate to have those kinds of choices in our lives. And we need those choices in order to have the kind of life and environment in which that child can prosper and grow.
Absolutely.
I know a young woman in Greenville, Mississippi, who had a child when she was 16 years old. She had already left high school because she needed to take care of her father. They had no insurance to pay for nursing aides, and she took care of him at home. She drops out of school. She gets pregnant. She has the baby. And now she doesn't even understand what the programs are out there that she could apply for, because people in Mississippi will tell her, you're not going to get them. They screw you over. You're not going to get them. So don't even bother to apply. And now she's living with that struggle of how do I feed my child? How do I buy the diapers? How do I buy what that child needs for playthings, toys? If I go to a full-time job, I got to put the child in daycare. So it's so complicated when you don't have those kinds of choices in your life. That's why I think a choice means life. It means a healthy, prosperous life for a child.
What you bring up is a really important topic about this young woman in Greenville, because it's not the uncommon story. What you and I know, and what all educated women know, is that governors, senators, CEOs, and even leaders of megachurches are still going to be able to get abortions for their wives, their mistresses, their daughters. This is not actually a question of pro-birth or pro-life. This is a purely economic oppression of our poorest women, our most uneducated women, the women who have the least access to everything that is necessary to have a healthy, successful birth, and to be able to bring that child up in a healthy, successful environment.
Well, and we as women have to do everything we can to help them while this tragedy surrounds us right now. Like I'm the godmother for that child, and I'm helping her through this time of figuring out what job she can find, that she can make enough money to pay for daycare. Her mother is growing tired of doing all the babysitting because she needs to work too.
Right.
So it's so complicated, and our politics is not helping us take care of these single women. It's a question of what my book talks about, penis politics. When men are primarily in control, they have the power, they have the authority. And look what they've done to women with the reversal of Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
Our constitutional rights have been violated.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful for the constitutional rights we have right now. But I want to keep Roe v. Wade because it is essential to our economic livelihood and to our emotional and physical well-being.
Yes.
But yet we have done nothing at this point since the Roe v. Wade reversal to try to improve the situation for women. And I know you've spoken to others about the Equal Rights Amendment, but that amendment is so key to helping us reverse Roe v. Wade, because, by the way, the word woman is not in the Constitution. Literally, exactly. We are persons or humans.
But we're not, are we?
No, we're not being treated.
Men.
We're not being treated as humans. We
if
have
they can say persons, but then name men and exclude women, they have specifically revoked our personhood constitutionally.
Right. Even the amendment that gave us the vote
Yes.
doesn't use the word woman. I
No.
want woman in the Constitution.
Yes.
Roe v. Wade, essentially reversing Roe v. Wade, essentially took us out of the Constitution. And that is, just as I said a few seconds ago, it's a physical and emotional and economic attack on women.
Yes.
And that's why this election and the election in 2024 will be so terribly important. And however it ends up after this election, this coming Tuesday, we still need to fight for these rights leading up to 2024.
Yes.
So as soon as the last vote is counted, whether it's Tuesday night or weeks from now, we have to start getting ready for 2024, because we need to make sure that our constitutional rights are included and that we are valued and respected and treated as equals. Absolutely. And that's not happening right now. That's not happening.
No. And the other thing that I believe we must do is no one is taking care of these women. You are godmother to this young woman. We can all reach out and give one a hand. I know it can be really overwhelming when we look at the magnitude of the situation and we look at the magnitude of what has to be done to help this very significant percentage of the American populace who is poor, and now the oppression has been enhanced exponentially to this reversal. But if every one of us can reach out to one, I'm a big advocate about that. It's what my TED Talk's about. It's what my book's about. Women reaching out just to one. And for all the women who say, oh, but I don't have time and I have my own kids. And if everyone is reaching out to one, someone's going to reach out to you too. But we have to start somewhere. And one of the things that I think is really important, that I truly believe is important, is as we're reaching out to other women, whichever woman we decide to advocate for at any given time. And we didn't take them for the rest of our lives, but sometimes we will. As we support them in whatever ways we do, godparent their children, give them a small stipend and get 3 other women to pitch in, and now this woman can have enough money to feed her kids, whatever it is. I think it's really important that we start educating each other, that we start spreading understanding, so that women who did not get to have an education because they were raised in the poorest state in the country, or they were raised in the wealthiest state in the country by a poor family. Whatever happened, they got pregnant at 15, they didn't get to finish school, and they're working at minimum wage. To help educate these women, not to recruit them into any kind of cause, but to give them the power to make choices in their life, to make choices which candidate they follow, to make choices what they endorse in terms of a movement, and to make choices about what do they do in terms of reinstating and solidifying and codifying women's choice into the future.
We can do so many things to help low-income women, low-income girls deal with this issue while we wait for some another reversal of the Roe v. Wade decision, the Dobbs decision. And it can be many things, and all those things have to happen to really make a difference. one, the situation where you're helping an individual woman, that's important. You have community groups in your towns and cities
That's
who
right.
are doing the same thing. You can support them, you can volunteer, you can give money to them, and you also can help with elections. And you
Yes.
also can help with getting laws passed.
Yes.
Will help ensure that we get Roe v. Wade back in the Constitution, but also that we don't end contraceptives. There's talk about ending contraceptives as a result of the makeup of the Supreme Court, ending gay marriage, and those
Forcing
things.
reversal for
Right.
trans people.
Right, exactly. And, as a result of the Roe v. Wade reversal, now they think we can do much more to try to change our cultural environment, so that it goes back to the old ways of living. And we have to make sure that does not happen. And
Yes.
elections are important and laws are important, but also individual care.
Individual care is essential, because that is where we're going to help educate women to understand, does this feel like someone is working in your best interest, or does this feel like you are being manipulated? I'm not talking about going in and preaching to women. I'm talking about educating them to implement critical thought on their own behalf and for their own benefit. I was speaking with a woman yesterday, and she is talking with a number of women who she knows, and these are successful business women, and they are going to create a situation in their town where once a month it's going to be a mom-free day. Moms come, they're going to bring their kids, the teenage kids or young adult kids of these women, or whoever they know, whoever they can get from their church or their community, what have you, will watch the little ones. And they're actually going to share and educate in a very social environment. So that the women of their community who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale get, number one, a day off. Because being a mom for anyone, but especially at that socioeconomic scale, is a 24/7 job. You do not get any time. You don't get a break. You don't have time for a vacation or even a day off. And at the same time, they get to feel that they are being heard instead of just teaching a class. By having it in this social situation, they get to express their greatest challenges. Right. And then they get to learn how to address them differently. This is just one template that I've been made aware of recently, and I would love to see this spread. And I would love to see and hear about other templates that are being developed for women to help women. So for all of you watching, at the end, I want you to comment. What is your idea? What is your idea? Get in the conversation, because that's where it starts, is when more women get in the conversation, then we become greater than the sum of our parts. Right.
And I think those kinds of programs and activities are so important for women, because it helps them then start to talk to their children as they mature. And whether you're low income, middle income, or high income, it doesn't really matter. All mothers and fathers need to be talking to their children openly, and not for a fear of talking about sex, talking about contraceptives, talking about the impact that having sex will have on you, talking about abortion, talking about all these issues at a relatively young age, teenage years, because it needs to be a common vocabulary where it's nothing wrong with saying the word penis. It's nothing wrong with saying the word vagina and abortion and pro-choice, and making your children feel comfortable talking and asking questions about those things. So as they grow up, they can make their own decisions about what to do and hopefully not end up in a situation where they're having a child they're not ready for.
Yes.
And I write a lot in my book about sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. Those topics are important as well because it could prevent the pregnancy.
That's right.
In a young woman.
Mhm.
So it's all about that journey that you take raising your children, and a
Mhm.
mother has to be prepared to talk about it. My mother never talked to me about sex,
No.
and to be honest, I never had a big discussion with my own daughter. I basically had one of those trying to get it out conversations where I would try to pick the right words, and she would say, "Oh, Mom, I know all about this. Don't tell me. I know all about it." And I,
Right.
so I
And
said,
the
"Okay, you
question
do,
is,
but
do they?
remember these
Do
things."
they? Do they know all about it, or do they know what was said in the school gym?
Right. No, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where it comes from. And that's why they need to understand what the real impacts are.
Mhm.
And I think that is so important. And I also believe that one-on-one outreach is really truly valuable in our society today.
Mhm.
But even as important is the election. And
Mhm.
right now, everyone in the media is talking about the get out the vote,
Mhm.
because that is key to this election
It is.
that we will know more about on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Or next Friday.
Or next Friday, right, exactly. But get out the vote is essential because as a country, we are divided. There's Republicans and there's Democrats, and it's about half and half. And then there are a few independents who switch. But we are so divided that tomorrow, when people go vote, it will be about GOTV. Who does it better will win.
Mhm.
But we know that GOTV is truly key to winning this election and having a
Now, Karen,
choice.
for all those people out there who are listening are saying, what is GOTV?
The vote.
Exactly.
But sorry, guys.
I know. We know. Many of the listeners will know, but I can just tell, I can feel that there's someone saying, what is GOTV?
And I am a true believer in the traditional GOTV pamphlet, which is door to door.
Yes.
And talking to people, not the day before the election, but weeks before the election.
Years.
So years before the election, because you're planting that seed.
Yes.
Yes, maybe I need to get registered. Maybe I want to do the early voting. So I need to understand how that works, as well as absentee ballots.
Yes.
And all of that needs to start, in my mind anyway, just like you said, Leslie, years from now, which means on Wednesday after the election, the Democratic Party starts thinking about how to improve their get out the vote, whether they win a lot of elections or not. They need to do that. And what I've experienced in my campaigning is they have this system now where they can tell what addresses have voters who vote regularly. And or who voted maybe election or two ago. And they want to make sure they go out and vote. My mentality is don't focus on them.
Go talk to the people who have given up.
Go talk to the people who are giving up. Those are the votes that we are missing. And to do that, it's hard work, but you have to get volunteers or you pay people to go door to door in those low turnout precincts. And many of them are people of color. And you have to say, this is the reason why you need to go vote for the next president, the next member of Congress, your board of supervisors, your city council, whatever your judges, because many of the
Mm-hmm.
judges are elected. There has to be a very localized plan to go door to door, and don't just rely on these computer programs that you put on your phone and you say, oh, they voted, let's go remind them to vote again. We don't need to do that. Send them to the low turnout precincts. There's not enough of that happening. Stacey Abrams in Georgia, who's running for governor, she has been really terrific at doing that in her state. And it's helped elect 2 Democratic senators. And then maybe it will elect Stacey Abrams as governor.
Yes.
But
And this
that
morning, there was a big news report that one of the counties in Georgia did not send out absentee ballots. And so now that county has filed a lawsuit. And what happens is people hear that and they say, what's the point? What the point is that's not when you quit, that's when you double down.
Mhm.
In 2020, 2016, I believe. Well, it was one or the other. There were a full 65 million people who didn't vote. Those are, many of them are saying, I've given up, I don't care. If one county wants to play dirty politics and 10% of that 65 million people go out and vote, the dirty ploy didn't work.
Mhm.
This is what we must understand and help people understand is we don't give up, we double down.
Exactly. And we don't let these activities that may sound very simplistic, but they're important in terms of getting GOTV up and going. For example, there's some states now have rules about handing out water to people who are coming to vote. And now they're saying, well, you can't hand out water. Like, why can't you hand out water? And at the precinct building, where you vote, why can't you hand out water? For goodness sakes, it might be hot in some states, or the line is so long you start to get thirsty. It's okay to hand out water. The thinking there is, oh, well, you're paying for their vote by giving them water.
Well,
that's ridiculous.
That's not the thinking. That's the propaganda.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, exactly.
There's so much that we could go on and on and on about, but the point is, going forward, women, who are you going to reach out to? What one woman are you going to reach out to? Or what 4 of your friends are you going to collaborate with to create a situation where more women feel included and more women are educated? Because we cannot get the vote out. We cannot get the vote out when we have the percentage of women that we have who are uneducated. And so they simply vote based on what their minister, their neighbor, their mother, or their auto mechanic is doing. And so to me, the most important aspect of getting the vote out is for women to feel supported, for women to feel aligned, and to be in the state of becoming educated about the costs of not voting, the costs of not knowing why you are voting. Voting is one thing, but know why you are voting. Why are you voting for that person? And so as we go forward, I propose over and over, every time I can get somebody to let me up on a soapbox, that we start reaching out to each other and we start sharing education and we start bringing more understanding of what it is costing us at every level. And even though it's easy to quit, before you do, every time you think about quitting, I have a challenge for you. I want you to go and look in the eyes of your daughter I want you to go and look in the eyes of your granddaughter. Are you going to quit? Or are you going to fight for her?
That's so well put and so necessary. And we need firm and equal footing in our nation's foundational legal document called the
Yes.
Constitution.
Yes.
And if we can't get that back, then I don't know where the next day takes us. And that's why election, get out the vote, is so vital, so that we have some way of reversing the decision by the Supreme Court and bringing us back to a civilized democracy. Because right now we're not civilized.
We are not. And we are not a democracy.
And we're not a democracy. And that's what we need to get back and put women in the Constitution, damn it.
That's right. So, Karen, thanks for coming and having a conversation about really crucial topics that are hard right now and that are going to continue to be hard. Everything doesn't fly or sink on this election.
Right.
This is the run-up to a run that's going to last for a while, past 24.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's educate ourselves. Let's educate each other so that we are more prepared to require what it is we deserve. And let's give praise. Just a moment. I just have to, at the end here, give praise to the Gen Zs who are absolutely not putting up with it.
Yes, that's so true.
They are absolutely not putting up with it. What was taken from them is something they'd had all their lives. So thank you to the Gen Zs. And now remember, comment. I want to know, what are your ideas? How can we support each other as women? Particularly the women who are in any one of 100 ways marginalized, disenfranchised. How can we stand in solidarity with each other? Because we are 50.53% of the population. We have the numbers.
Yes, we do.
Now let's claim the table. So thanks again, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I'm going to do for you what I always do. I'll have Karen's links, her social media links, her link to her book. You can get in touch with her and connect, have a communication directly with her. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, as you go through the rest of this day, we are all stronger and wiser than we know.